ready, and my time here on earth now is to learn the citizenship so I can be ready to live in the Messianic kingdom. Otherwise, if we all go in the Messianic kingdom acting like we do in the world, we turn the Messianic kingdom into just like the world. So this is our time to learn the qualities of citizenship that will be required in the Messianic kingdom.
That's good. This is our time.
And so when we read the parable, when we read the Sermon on the Mount, it's full of this kind of inverted thinking. If you want to be great, be small. If you to really count in the kingdom, you need to hunger after righteousness. Not just say, oh, well, that's how people are, what can you expect? You know, we need to be people who are developing that kind of character. And one of the first things they're going to talk about here is being a child. And Florian, time for you to read?
Just finished.
You finished? Okay, very good. Didi?
You want me to pick up with
The
the disciples?
disciples.
The disciples are to become like a child in terms of self-evaluation of their own status. To be like the child has explicitly to do with status, not with any character traits supposedly typical of children. The child represents the lowest order in the social scale, the one who is under the authority and care of others and who has not yet achieved the right of self-determination. To become like a child is to forgo status and to accept the lowest place to be a little one.
I like the way they said that, to be a child, because I've often, I raised 4 of them, you know, I wouldn't exactly have said that we need to act like them. And I like that they said it doesn't have to do with the characteristics and qualities of demanding my own way and being patient and frustrated, but that it has to do with recognizing that you're not in charge, which is probably one of the great injustices of the contemporary way of handling children, is that we let them think they are in charge.
Yeah.
You know, instead of teaching them this spiritually significant lesson from the time that they're wee little ones, that they're not in charge. They can trust the people who love them. And regretfully, that may not be true in every home, but hopefully, that as Christian families, we're teaching our children that they're not in charge and they can trust the ones who are in charge. Page 846 at the top.
Continue.
Was that?
Very short.
Okay, go ahead.
A child does not think of himself as a peer to the adults around him and therefore equally worthy of prestige and honor as his parents. He naturally considers himself lower than, dependent upon, and subordinate to the adult world around him. A true disciple adopts an attitude of self-denial, replacing his own sense of self-importance with a humble posture of subordination.
Very good, thank you. And again, that to me is part of my citizenship class that I'm having to go through in preparation for the kingdom. Tanya, are you up to some hop, skipping, and jumping?
Sure.
Okay, read the scripture first, receiving a child.
Whoever receives one child like this in my name receives me.
Good. Now let's jump over to page 847 at the top.
The one who receives a child and attends to a child's needs has directly served God, and his reward will be commensurate. A person might regard a child's needs and concerns to be of small consequence when compared with the more serious and important business of the adult world. The child's questions might seem insignificant, not on par with the serious business of learning Torah and pursuing the kingdom. Rabbi Yeshua taught his disciples that care of a child's Rabbi Yeshua taught his disciples that care for children ranks as high as serving the Lord himself.
For all of you
Wow.
in children's ministry, pat on the back. Now, Tanya, let's have you keep reading, but drop all the way down to the next paragraph. See the paragraph that starts at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
Drop down to the last sentence of that.
For the one who is least
No,
among
all the way down to the last sentence of
the last sentence.
the kingdom inversion.
Yes, the kingdom inversion principle reversed the ranking game and illustrated his point. He explained, for the one who is least among all of you, this is the one who is great. Luke 9:48. The truly great are those who stoop low to exalt the lowly.
Very good. Did good, girl. Deanna, let's have you pick it up just after the scripture, John the son of Zebedee.
What page is it? I think it was
Page
847. Oh, John the son of Zebedee raised an objection. He and several of the other disciples had recently encountered an Exodus quoting the Master's name in his exorcism. He saw him commanding demons to leave, and they heard him invoking the authority of the name of Yeshua of Nazareth and his authority over the evil spirits. John said, "We tried to hinder him because he does not follow along with us." That is to say, the exorcist was not one of the 12, perhaps not a disciple.
Very good. Let's have you pick it up, Marina.
Why did John bring up this story? The disciples were concerned over ranking the kingdom. The Master told them to accord the least of his disciples respect, as if they were the greatest, and to regard themselves as the least. John wanted to know how far this principle of inversion applied. Did it include even those outside the circle of disciples proper? Did Yeshua expect them to accord such honor to anyone claiming to be a disciple? Should they respect an impostor?
You know, and I'm so glad they explained it, because I have always read this and not seen, it seemed like he was like, you know, like a little kid in the middle of the teacher trying to teach on the American history, and the little kid said, "My grandpa has a farm," you know, it's like, it's totally out of the blue. And it always felt to me like when John pointed out this, we saw this guy that was, it was like he was, would you get back on the subject? What does that have to do with anything? But you see the connection here. Let's have you go ahead and read, who's reading? Marina? Marina. Let's have Marina finish that, because there's only another sentence there I want to get on that page.
He may have also had in mind another saying of the Master. In Matthew 12:30, the Master said, "He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with them scatters."
Very good.
With
Okay.
me scatters.
Now, let's go to the next page, and Christina, we'll have you pick it up with when John reported the encounter.
When John reported the encounter to the Master, however, Yeshua surprised the disciples by saying, "Do not hinder him, for there is no one who will perform a miracle in my name and be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. For he who is not against us is for us." The two statements are seemingly incongruous, especially when juxtaposed against each other. He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. For he who is not against us is for us. The two statements demonstrate the Master's attitudes of inclusion and exclusion. He excludes the Pharisees who are against him in Matthew 12, but includes the unknown exorcist in Mark 9. The criterion which distinguishes the two sayings seems to be that the Pharisees spoke evil against the Master, whereas the unknown exorcist, although not an official follower, spoke in Yeshua's name.
Good, let's have you pick it up, Diana.
The Pharisees criticized Yeshua, saying, "This man casts out demons only by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons," Matthew 12:24, whereas the unknown exorcist could not speak evil against him, while at the same time employing the authority of his name. Yeshua meant to teach his disciples a level of tolerance towards competing ministries, as long as those competitors do not speak against him and his message. The entire story alludes back to the episode of Eldad and Medad, who prophesied in the camp of Israel. John took up the role of Joshua in that story, and the Master echoed Moses' liberal attitude and rejection of territorial competition.
Thank you. Let's have you pick it up, Janice.
Such an attitude of tolerance remained rare among the followers of Yeshua. We would all do well to learn it. Many variations of faith and practice profess the name of Yeshua. Some may even involve dubious miracle working or suspicious theologies. Ours, however, should be an attitude of inclusiveness. Whoever is not against us is for us. In the end, the coming of the Son of Man will sort the wheat from the tares. In that day, many of us will say, "Master, Master, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?
Wow.
And the Lord will decide if that it was, get away from me, I never knew you, or, come in, a good and faithful servant. And I thought there was something to think about there in terms of being careful with our own critical spirit, which is a tough thing, because on one hand, we're taught through the scriptures that we need to judge the spirit. But it's one thing if you're judging a ministry. Let's say there's a ministry over here, and you're trying to decide if you should follow that ministry. You have a responsibility to judge that ministry prayerfully, whether the way that halakha is, the way that preacher is leading his people, is that the path the Lord wants you on. But once you are settled on the path that the Lord wants you on, we don't have any business, I think, of deciding that that one over there is not doing it right. We're not called, we're not called to be on that path, so we don't need to evaluate it. We need to evaluate the path we're on and make sure it's staying right. But it's...
So like the wheat and the tares grow together?
The wheat and the tares grow together, and it's not our business to decide one from the other, to figure it out. We need to make sure that we're doing what the Lord wants us to do.
So if you have someone else that you see is on the wrong path,
Is that type?
why not call them out?
I think it would depend on what your relationship with them is. If it's another ministry, let's see if I can think of examples. If it's a friend of yours that's looking and thinking about going to this particular church, or is in this particular church, and they're open to, they're beginning to have trouble, they're beginning to have doubts, they're wondering about things, then it may be appropriate for you to say, I'm really concerned that maybe that. But if they are committed, or if they're, I don't think we need to take a look at, let's see, I use a broad example. We don't need to consider all the ways that the Mormons might be wrong. And I don't think, first of all, that we should use our time and energy to even go there if it doesn't pertain to us. If we have a loved one that's thinking about going into the Mormon church, then maybe so. But if we don't, it's not our business. We don't need to go there. We especially don't need to do that and go on Facebook and start an effort to try to tell everybody what's wrong with that.
Right.
We can't impact that. It's not. I would say God clearly hasn't given that to us as an assignment, because He hasn't put us in a position where we can do anything about it anyway. And so all it does is entice us to engage in what's called lashon hara, evil speech and critical thinking. And my goodness, we should take, that parable of taking the plank out of our own eye really comes, look at, before we do that, we should make sure we're keeping kosher the way,
Yes.
take on the halakha that we see and make sure we've got our halakha right before we start criticizing others. Let's go to page 849. Did I make that muddy enough that, or was that worth thinking through, or just that?
Absolutely.
Okay, then on page 849, Diane, I think I like you for that. I like your laugh. Your laugh is so hearty. Yeah, pass out the candy. Page 849, it goes to the millstone.
No, I'm reading.
Oh, you're reading? Oh.
Then you.
Yeah, we have fun. Fun is good. Yes.
Let Sharon, let's have you pick up with the millstone. Page 8.
And whoever causes one of the little ones who have faith in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a millstone hung on his neck and to be thrown into the sea.
Okay, let's have you now jump that next paragraph and pick it up with the master's strong words.
The master's strong words beg two questions. Who are the little ones who have faith in Yeshua? What does it mean to cause them to stumble? As mentioned above, little ones are literal children, and at the same time, little ones are young, novice, or lowly disciples. Causing to stumble implies leading a child or a disciple into sin or apostasy. Based upon the passage which follows below, the specific type of sin the master had in mind might have been sexual impropriety of some type, but the warning applies to anyone who causes a child or a disciple to stray from the straight and narrow path.
Okay, we're going to get into some areas that are going to get a bit X-rated, so if there's anybody who can't handle that, be aware that's where we're headed. Here's the deal. Joyce, let's see, you picked up what he laments.
He laments, woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks. For it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come. But woe to the man through whom the stumbling block comes. Matthew 18:7. In other words, the fallen world inevitably offers a constant supply of temptations. But those who victimize and mislead others or intentionally allure others into perverse behavior will face extraordinary repercussions. It is because of these things that the wrath of God will come upon the sons of disobedience. Colossians 3:6.
Let's go over to page 851, and we'll move to you, Rosa. First full paragraph in classical Jewish.
In classical Jewish interpretation and in the teaching of our Master Yeshua, the final verse of the scroll of Isaiah offers a glimpse into Gehenna, the place of punishment in the afterlife. Then they will go forth and look on the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me. For their worm will not die, and their fire will not be quenched. And they will have an abhorrence to all mankind.
Okay, now Gehenna, when it's translated, is often translated as hell. Our ideas of hell and some of the things that we take with certainty actually come out of Greek mythology and not out of our own tradition. They're also colored with Dante's Inferno from the Middle Ages. So when we're getting ready to talk about Gehenna here, you might need to sort of erase everything out of your brain that you think you know about hell or Gehenna, because what we're going to look at here is going to look different. And it might upset you unless you realize that a lot of the stuff that we think we know about hell is not from scriptures, it's not from Jewish tradition, it's from Greek mythology.
Is it Hades, like the underworld and all that stuff? Okay.
Go ahead and keep reading.
Yeshua quoted the verse from Isaiah 3 times as he warned his disciples about sins committed with hand, foot, or eye. In each case, he declared it preferable to cut off the offending member rather than retain it, sin and suffer in Gehenna.
And it's that how your hand, your foot, your eye can lead you into sin. That is the X-rated part. It's specifically talking about sexual sin in relationship to the hand, the foot, and the eye. Let's go back though and talk a little bit about Gehenna from the footnote on 43. Right? And have you picked it up, Chris? Footnote 43? 868. It's footnote 43 on page 868.
The word Gehenna is transliteration of the Hebrew
Gehenna,
which simply means Valley of Hinnom. In the Hebrew Bible, it is usually appears in the Valley of the Sons of Hinnom. The valley is the westernmost of the three valleys that define the topography of Jerusalem.
Okay, so on one level, this Valley of Gehenna, or Gehenna, is an actual physical place. Keep going.
In the days of Judean monarchy, apostolate, Judeans sacrificed children by fire in the Hinnom Valley in connection with despicable worship of Moloch. The prophet Jeremiah condemned this practice and predicted that the valley would one day be called the place of slaughter. For reasons that are not entirely clear, the Hinnom Valley took on a neither-world association with Judaism.
What I have heard is that this valley of Hinnom or Gehenna was the place that all of the trash from Jerusalem was put and then it was burnt, and the fire never went out because it was always burning as they added more, so it was the city refuge and became a picture of this continual burning and ongoing torment. Keep going.
In later Jewish writings, the literal name Gehenna acquired a metaphorical use of an appellation for the place of punishment in the afterlife. God showed Moses Gehenna. Moses asked, "Who is punished in it?" He answered, "The wicked and those who transgress against me." As it is written in Isaiah 66:24, "Then they will go forth and look on the corpse of the men who have transgressed against me."
Let's go ahead and have you picked up the end.
Jewish theology of the afterlife is not identical with the Christian theology. Rabbinic opinion on the fates of souls in the afterlife varies and must be compared and contrasted against apostolic theology and the teaching of our Master. On the strength of Daniel 12:2, some of the sages did believe in a resurrection of both the wicked and the righteous, which is consistent with the apostolic teaching. But many allowed the resurrection not only for the righteous. All agree that the souls of the wicked go to Gehenna after death. In rabbinic theology, Gehenna is ordinarily a place of purgation, but both the possibility of extinction and the possibility of eternal suffering did exist in Pharisaic theology as well.
Okay, so in that Jewish mindset that the apostles inherited, there's three possibilities for Gehenna, or this place of suffering. One could be that it would be a place of purgation. What does that mean? Like purgatory, that word comes from it's waiting. Cleansing? Purging. Cleansing. Yes, this idea that you go there and not so much of waiting. Excuse me, one of those candies almost got me. But that it's a place where you got, let's imagine your soul and it's got this black stuff all over your soul because of all the stuff you've done. You go to a place of purgation where because of your suffering, and remember we talked earlier today about that measure for measure. God has said, okay, you've got this much black stuff, so now you've got to suffer this much to take out that black stuff. So that's the concept. I'm not suggesting it's accurate, I'm just presenting the different and basically, because there's all three of these different thoughts, we have to come to the conclusion that in Judaism, they haven't quite figured it out, which is okay. One of the things we learn as we begin to study Chumash is that the Jews are very comfortable not knowing, and three Jews, five opinions kind of thing, and it's perfectly okay to not have an opinion. Christianity tends to be much more dogmatic and much more orthodox, and this is what we believe in. If anybody varies from this belief, then they're wrong, kind of thing. I kind of am of the mind that we might be better to go back to the idea of, I don't know, maybe it's this way, and maybe it's this way, and God will figure it out. I know I don't want to go there, Okay, so one was purgation. The other possibility was that it was extinction. That when you go there, you just disappear. It sounded like maybe the Pope was of that mind here recently when he said there was no hell. It sounded like he was suggesting that people...
If he did say that.
If he did say that, but if he said it, and they said that he was misunderstood when he said it, and it might be that he was dealing with exactly this idea that we frankly don't know. I mean, nobody knows. It's possible that when you go to hell, you just cease to exist. The other possibility is that you will receive a resurrection, you go there, and you don't cease to exist, you suffer forever. The other thing in question is, does everybody get resurrected at a certain point in history, and then the good people they get resurrected for eternal life, and the bad ones get resurrected for eternal death, eternal separation from God. These are ideas, and that's the idea that the Christian community tends to accept with orthodoxy, but in Jewish theology, it's like we don't know. Yeah, Marina.
So I have a question. The Pharisees believe that there is resurrection.
Right.
But the
Sadducees did not.
Sadducees did not.
And notice that the Sadducees aren't even involved in this question, because they were totally secular Jews that had to do with just getting along.
And when it mentioned sages, there were sages that were Pharisaic, and were there sages that were Sadducees?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that.
So when they mention sages here, though, are they talking about Pharisee sages? Or I don't know. What do they?
It might be that the sages predate the Pharisaicism. The sages might date back earlier, all the way to the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, when the Pharisaic party may not have been formed yet. Pharisaicism does not go back to the time of Moses, and all we know is it has appeared by the time of Jesus, but I don't know where it starts.
So what does sages mean, just general?
I have been trying to get that defined, because I get in my mind, I would like to be able to make the distinction between who are the sages and who are the rabbis, and I haven't been able to. It seems the best I've been able to come up with is that the rabbis seem to be a term that gets identified with the scholars after 70 AD and continue on up through the Middle Ages. Whereas and I said rabbis, yes?
Yes.
And the sages predate that maybe from the time of the Great Sanhedrin. The Great Sanhedrin was established by Nehemiah and Ezra back when they built the Second Temple, and they pulled of course there'd been an original Sanhedrin way back to the time of Moses, but when he reconvened the Sanhedrin, it was called the Great Sanhedrin, and I think that the people who sat on that Sanhedrin and made the laws and made the decisions and so forth, I think they're called sages.
That's what I heard.
Okay, good. I'm glad I didn't just totally make it up.
No.
So rabbis is more contemporary, sages is more.
To do with a lot of interpretation.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's,
Thank you.
let's go ahead and read that last paragraph in the footnote that we're reading in 43. And Florine, are we ready for you, or Deanne? I just used it. Florine?
According to the apostles, Gehenna is not a place of permanent damnation. The apostles taught that all the souls of the dead, the wicked and the righteous, will return to their bodies in the resurrection before the final judgment. There shall certainly be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. Acts 24:15. While awaiting resurrection and judgment, the souls in Gehenna undergo torment by fire. See Luke 16:24.
Okay, so we kind of come to the conclusion from that is that according to the apostles, people who haven't accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Savior go into Gehenna, where they are tormented until the resurrection. Is that how you're reading that? And then later they get thrown into the lake of fire for eternal, or maybe I don't have that right.
While awaiting resurrection and judgment, the souls in Gehenna undergo.
So maybe they go to the Gehenna after their judgment. The
Well,
souls.
before Jesus conquered death, burial, and the grave, I think that the evil were in Gehenna.
Okay, but we're talking about from what the apostles taught, so it would have been from that point forward. So what's the situation now, or in the last 2,000 years, as opposed to before Christ did his redemptive work? That when a person dies, do the wicked people go to Gehenna?
Does that pay for their sins?
That's what I was told, yeah. Well, before Christ rose and took the first fruits, the ones that were righteous went to